All right, what's up, you guys? Welcome to another episode of Giorgio Says the podcast. Obviously, my name is Giorgio. If you don't know me by now, welcome. If you're new here, we discuss everything Housewives and Bravo TV adjacent. Um, New episodes of the podcast, obviously, for all of you that follow me, know that every Wednesday I release a new podcast. I do also have a Patreon where I release exclusive bonus tea on that channel. I have two different tiers that you can choose from. It's very simple. You can go on there. It's very new. It's only been up for the last 3 weeks, so you're not missing out on too much yet. And keyword is yet, because I'm about to go full throttle on Patreon. But for everyone who has subscribed to Patreon and follows me on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, thank you so much for your constant support, because I couldn't do any of this without any of you. But today's episode, I'm really going to dive in on New Jersey. I briefly touched on this in my TikTok yesterday and it went rampant. But and I was just laughing at so many of the comments that you guys were writing about the tea I delivered. Well, there's been some other updates. There's been some other things going on. Obviously, Teresa and Louis got married over the last weekend. There was some drama, as always, at the season finale party that they taped just a few days ahead of Teresa's wedding. Um, but yeah, so we're gonna get into that and let's go.
Welcome to the Giorgio Says podcast, spilling the tea with Giorgio Takanokis. If you love to keep up to date with all the latest pop culture news and celebrity gossip, then this is the podcast for you. Now, please welcome your host, Giorgio Takanokis.
Okay, so as you probably know, and if you don't, you've been sleeping under a rock. So Teresa got married over the weekend, and initially they were saying that this was going to be a separate 4-part wedding special that was just basically going to follow all the moments leading up to the wedding and then obviously show the wedding and all that fun stuff. Now, I'm getting some reports in from some of my sources, basically clarifying a couple things. So that's kind of what I want to do today, is just kind of bring us up to speed. But initially, as I mentioned, they were talking about doing a 4-part series on Teresa's wedding. And, you know, Bravo does this for some of their heavy hitting housewives, as we've seen with other housewives who've gotten spinoffs of their own. Now, this is not considered a spinoff just because it's more of like a special. And what I've heard is that they are just going to do a 1 episode of the wedding, which makes more sense to me, because unless there was a few days of other activities and things leading up to the wedding, I don't necessarily think there's enough content to spread out over 4 episodes. So I'm kind of glad that we're going to get it in 1 episode, because I think they'll be able to pack it in and it'll be more interesting, in my opinion. But there were some other things going on, obviously, with Teresa's wedding. You know, a lot of people had a lot to say about how Teresa looked, the hair being the main part of the look that everyone honed in on. And I have to say, I am really not shocked at the hair, only because, listen, if you've ever been to New Jersey or you have family from New Jersey, I have family from New Jersey that live in New Jersey. If you've ever been to a wedding that's either Greek, Italian, just not American, for the most part, there's going to be really big hair and lots of it. So that did not shock me, honestly. I mean, I know a lot of people were disappointed because they're like, why all this hair? It's giving Marge Simpson. I mean, that's what commenters were saying. I didn't see it that way. I felt like I wouldn't expect anything less from Teresa at this point. Like, I feel like if she had come in more simple, it wouldn't have been her. It wouldn't have been Jersey. You know what I mean? So I think all in all, she looked great. She looked really happy. She had a really nice glow about her, and she seemed like she was in a good space. And we get to see a lot of the BTS, because obviously her daughters are in the wedding and they are on TikTok. So they're showing us all these different variations of the getting ready process and we see moments of Teresa walking down the aisle via TMZ, and then we have people that sent in videos from the reception, and we got to see other housewives. And I was actually really stunned because I saw that none of the housewives from Beverly Hills were there, which I thought was really interesting. But I know that Kyle was traveling, I believe, and that is why she couldn't go. Because of all people, she was on Ultimate Girls Trip with Teresa. I would have thought that she would have come to the wedding, but understandably so, she was traveling and not in the States. So, but we did have Marge there, Margaret. We had Dorinda, we had Phaedra, we had Kenya, we even had Chanel Ion from Dubai, which I'm loving that she's popping up in all these like housewife events and such, because I actually really love Ion. So I'm glad to see her kind of mingling in with the other ladies and such. But there was two people who were visibly not at Teresa and Louis' wedding, and that is not so much of a shock because I kind of felt like this was coming after the last reunion when Teresa basically said, you know, this is my bridal party and this is my wedding and I'm going to do it the way I want. But Melissa and Joe decided they were not going to attend Teresa's wedding. And this stemmed from a fight or an altercation that took place at the filming of the season finale party for New Jersey's new season. And apparently, this kind of stems all the way back to the beginning of filming or right before filming started for this new season of New Jersey, where I guess, and shout out to the Morgan Letters. Morgan Letters on Instagram got screenshots of some edited messages that kind of left out people's names. But basically, it is alleging that some time ago, Margaret and Melissa were in New York City doing like press stuff, probably around the show and things like that. So while they were in New York, I guess Margaret's friend, who was her longtime friend at the time, I believe it was Laura, went out to the car, opened the car door, and then shockingly saw Melissa allegedly making out with another gentleman who was also married and also, I guess, friends with Melissa and her husband. Like they all know each other. They've been friends for a long time. So the friend shuts the door and obviously lets Margaret know. I guess they all come to an agreement that they're not going to bring this up. They're not going to talk about it. It is what it is. Leave it where it was in the car. So I guess allegations or things kind of were floating around, and Teresa got wind of it because I think at the beginning of the season, before they started filming, I think Teresa met with her brother Joe and Melissa to make them aware that this is a rumor that's coming, around the bend. And I don't want to be involved in it, but I just want to give you a heads up. Now, it seemed like Joe and Melissa didn't really care either way, because obviously to them they probably were like, well, that's not true, so like as long as you don't make it a thing, then we'll be good and we'll leave it where it is as a rumor in the pits of like where it started. So I guess as the season started to film, Laura felt some type of way. Laura is Margaret's friend, who we will be introduced to at some point in the new season of New Jersey, but however, they have a long-time friendship and history together. I guess there was some issues regarding Margaret trying to get Laura on the show. Margaret claims that she tried to get Laura on the show multiple times. The producers were just not interested in her. And then all of a sudden we come to this season and it seems like production really wants to utilize Laura, but utilize her in a way to kind of expose Margaret. So Laura comes on, and I think she's a fish out of water from what I'm reading in terms of how she went about this. But I think it's clear that production really nudged her along with the strategy on how they were going to go after Margaret. So Laura met up with Jennifer Aiden and gives her this information that, Melissa had made out with a gentleman who's also married in New York. She saw it. She even told Margaret about it, blah, blah, blah. So Jennifer takes that information, obviously, and then goes to Teresa. Teresa wants nothing to do with it because, as I mentioned earlier, Teresa already heard about this rumor. She already brought it to their attention, and they had agreed that this was not going to be something that they were going to bring up on camera for the show. But it seems like they knew how to get the word around, because even though Jennifer went to Teresa, Teresa didn't want nothing to do with it. Jennifer then tells Danielle, who is a new housewife this upcoming season, and I guess they give her the ball. And at season finale party, Danielle brings this up to Melissa and says, this is the rumor that's going around, and this, that, and the other. And this sparked a huge issue because Melissa felt like this ultimately came from Teresa. Because as we know, these rumors about Melissa cheating are not new. I think it was season 4 or 5 where they tried to bring Strippergate up, and Teresa just, even though she wasn't the one saying it, she seemed to be around whenever the cameras were around when it was brought up on camera. So there was always this little friction going on at that time. But the rumors of Melissa cheating have not really been a new thing. They kind of pop up here and there. Now, whether or not that's done from the production side because they feel like she doesn't really have a storyline and these are easy grabs to go for, or she and Joe have some agreement, and yeah, I it could be multitude of things, and it could also just not be true. It could also just be BS, and the whole allegation is just not even close to being a true statement. But I think the reaction went overboard at the finale party, because I think because they were seemingly blaming Teresa for this, I think Louis got really upset. And so, basically was defending Teresa, basically saying, she doesn't deserve to be blamed for this. She had nothing to do with it. And then him and Joe almost get into an altercation. And that's when they have to be separated. And then, Melissa and Joe decide they ultimately will not be attending Teresa's wedding. And they didn't. They ended up going to the shore, which is, I think, is about an hour away from where the wedding was. And they had their own party, and they had their, Melissa's family was there, and they were doing all the stories, and they were throwing all these subliminal messages. And we all knew that there was going to be issues, but I don't think we realized it was going to be for real. Like, she wasn't going to go to the wedding. And sure enough, she wasn't there. And ultimately, I think it's sad. I think, I get it. Melissa and Teresa probably don't like each other, and that's fine. I think they both can agree to disagree on that. But with Joe's her brother. And I feel like Joe's always in the middle somehow, because he's either got to choose between his wife or his sister, when ultimately he just wants both in his life. And I think that's always the tricky part is, we ultimately want to take our partner's side, public facing. That's my motto. I'm going to stand ground with you as my partner, no matter what, in public situations. But when we get behind closed doors, then I'm going to check you. And I think that's where it becomes challenging, because they're also on a reality show. They have to talk about these things. There's obviously going to be things that come up between people that they would probably normally deal with behind closed doors, but they're forced to deal with it on camera. And then everybody, all the viewers chime in, and then that adds layers to things. So I completely understand how complex being on a reality show like Housewives can be if you are in a family dynamic. We look at Kyle and her sisters, and we see how that can impact real personal relationships. So, but nonetheless, it seems like we're going to have a really, really juicy New Jersey season coming up, and I am very much looking forward to it. I am really looking forward to meeting Laura and getting to know her stance on this whole situation with Margaret. I've reached out to Laura, and I'm going to try to get her on the podcast, because I would love to hear her side of things and just get her take on what everyone's saying about what's occurring or what's going to occur on this upcoming season. But so stay tuned for that. I'm still kind of trying to finagle that. But I think ultimately, it is sad that they were not able to attend Teresa's wedding. Ultimately, it's like your family not being at a very important day. And I think down the road, they may regret that. Obviously not right now. They're still heated and emotional. But I think at some point they will turn around and regret that they didn't go to that, especially Joe, because that's a big day for them, and their parents are no longer with us. So I can imagine the emotions that day of having some family there to support you. But unfortunately, these things keep rearing their ugly heads. But I want to talk about another rumor that I think is not true. And I saw someone come out and clarify. I think it was someone that was actually at the wedding. So I can't think of the person's name, so forgive me. But initially there was like a DM that was going around saying that this person attended the wedding allegedly and said that there was no food being served, dinner was running really behind, all the guests were eating Shake Shack, it was a disaster, blah, blah, blah. And then we got another report saying that because Teresa and Louis didn't have Melissa and Joe show up to the wedding that they RSVP'd to, apparently, that they ended up sending them the bill for, I guess, what they covered in cost for Melissa and Joe to go. So I also thought that was kind of like petty, and I don't think that that's true either. And Louis actually came out and said that they absolutely did not send a bill to them. That's so tacky. And I agree. If they actually did do that, that would be really, really tacky. So no, I don't believe that they sent Joe and Melissa a bill for their food that they did not eat or whatever have you. So I think a lot of people now are taking advantage of this whole situation and trying to create all these other narratives that are just simply not true. So that's kind of what I wanted to focus on the podcast, just give you guys the tea straight up without all the fluff that people are adding to the stories. So someone did come out and clarify that that's absolutely not true. The cocktail hour felt like dinner time because there was so much food. And I can see that because I have family in New Jersey and I've been to a New Jersey wedding. And let me just tell you, the venues that they use and the cocktail hours alone, you don't need dinner. You know what I mean? So it's always over the top in terms of food and cocktails and all that stuff, because that stuff's really important, specifically for Italians. And like my family's Greek, so it's a little similar in that way, specifically if you live in New Jersey. But food and all that stuff is very important part of a wedding. That's part of how you show everyone that you appreciate them coming and supporting you. So it's a big deal. So I didn't believe the whole everyone was eating Shake Shack stuff. So with that being said, I am really, really, really excited for this new chapter for Teresa. It'll be interesting to see how things unfold for her now that she's actually married to Louis, and see, I don't know, did she sign a prenup? I know people were pushing for her to sign a prenup up until the day of the wedding, from what I was hearing from different sources, but no answer as to what actually happened. Now, I know it's not too late to do one of those. If you get married, you can always do, I believe it's a postnuptial agreement, so you can always rectify things after the wedding rather. So it'll be interesting to see how Louis is now that he's married and legally attached to Teresa versus just being her boyfriend or whatever, because that shifts things when you're married. I think there's a level of comfort that comes. And I know there's a lot of eyes on Louis, and I know there's a lot of red flags surrounding Louis. So I think a lot of people are just a little bit hesitant because they don't want Teresa to go through another catastrophe of a situation regarding someone using her or taking her to the bank, so to speak. So, but I do wish Teresa well. I wish her all the happiness in the world. She obviously deserves it. She's been through so much. I do want her to be happy. I just want her to be smart this time around. I think most of us can agree on that. But yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about on today's episode. Nothing too crazy. These are the things that are, currently popping off online. I also mentioned earlier in the episode, I have my Patreon exclusive audios that come out on Friday, so you should check that out. There'll be a new episode out this Friday on the Patreon. I'm also working on doing some other fun deep dives. So please continue to send me anything you guys want me to dig into, any blind items, anything like that. And until I talk to you guys next week, I hope you guys have a fantastical rest of the week. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I know monkeypox and everything else under the sun is happening. So please, please, please be aware, be safe, protect yourself. And I will talk to you guys next week. All right. Bye.